Each year, billions of dollars are given for worthy projects that benefit society. This module will discuss where those billions of dollars are and how you and organizations can access them. Whether you are part of a large or small organization, a for-profit or a non-profit, the same principles apply. We live in increasingly complex and difficult times. Around the world, the needs of human beings increase. At one level, it seems to be a good thing that globalization has broken down the barriers between nations. But there is a negative side to globalization, too. The world that globalization is fostering has made old problems worse and has created new ones. So today, there is a pressing need for organizations to develop and fund projects to offset the harsh effects of globalization. And the need will only grow more pressing in the future. For example, problems with the environment, health, and education that used to be dealt with locally and nationally are now affecting whole regions and the world. The world's economies are more interconnected than they have ever been. The quality of life of every nation is increasingly dependent upon the quality of life of every other nation. At the same time, it is becoming harder and harder to provide the best circumstances in which people around the world can prosper. What I am about to say may surprise you, but it is true. People who succeed at getting funding know that there is an abundance of money in the world. Contrary to what most people believe, there is no lack of money. I know you may find the idea that money is abundant hard to believe, but it's true. Most people assume that money is hard to get. Most people assume that there isn't enough money to go around. But there really is more money than people need to do the good, necessary, important, and helpful things they want to do. In every country, eager entrepreneurs are looking to invest in businesses that serve a social as well as a sound commercial purpose. In addition, generous individuals, corporations, and government agencies fund proposals for nonprofits. A little later, when I talk about sources of funding, I'll suggest ways you can find out who gives in your country. Also, around the world, large amounts of money are given to support projects in other countries. Funders recognize that many countries share many of the same major funding priorities. When you research resources in your own country, think of how you can approach funders outside of it. Here are highlights from a 2004 report of the New York-based Foundation Center and the Washington, D.C.-based Council on Foundations that reflects the priorities and needs of many countries and funders within countries. Number one, more and more organizations with money to give are focusing on international projects. International giving in 2002 was roughly double the $1.6 billion estimated for 1998. Adjusted for inflation, international giving climbed 79% between 1998 and 2002, far exceeding the 42% gain in overall giving. Number two, international giving was projected to be at least $3 billion in 2004. Number three, based upon a sample of just over 1,000 of the larger U.S. foundations, overseas giving primarily benefited Asia, Latin America, Africa, and global programs. Of the $843 million in cross-border giving, nearly one-fourth benefited Asia and the Pacific. Western Europe received the second largest amount of grant dollars. However, two-thirds of this support targeted programs in developing countries or international agencies, such as the Geneva-based World Health Organization. Latin America and Africa ranked third and fourth by share of grant dollars. Of total overseas giving, 17.7% went to Latin America and 1.2% went to the Caribbean. Number four, the area of health benefited from the fastest growth and the largest share of international support. The $1.1 billion rise in international giving between 1998 and 2002 benefited every major program area, but gains were extremely uneven. Health posted by far the fastest growth, as its share of giving doubled to 32%. This dramatic increase reflects the Gates Foundation's emergence as the foremost global health funder, a growing philanthropic response to the global AIDS crisis and other pandemics, as well as continued support for reproductive health care. Other program areas that showed record gains in support included the environment, science and technology, and religion. Within the major fields areas of strong growth in grant dollars between 1998 and 2002, others included public health, medical research, peace and security, including terrorism issues, international area studies, human services, agricultural development, resource conservation, wildlife preservation, civil liberties, historic preservation, library support, and programs to improve government and promote civic participation and indigenous philanthropy. Number five, based upon a May 2004 survey on international grant making, despite economic and political turbulence, grant makers have increased funding levels for the regions they support. The proportion of grant makers reporting increases was largest for Asia and the Pacific, Sub-Saharan Africa, Mexico, and Eastern Europe. In addition to Mexico, the country most frequently mentioned as an area of increased giving was China. Number six, grant makers have sharpened their programmatic focus. Over 3/5 of respondents reported a change or sharpening of international program focus since 2000. Program areas that received increased additional attention included the environment, human rights, for example, women's rights, and international justice, and health, for example, healthcare access, HIV/AIDS, and the ability and availability of getting potable water. Number seven, grant makers have expressed a greater urgency to address global issues. Number eight, the global concerns of more than 8 out of 10 grant makers strongly coincide with critical issues identified in the United Nations Millennium Development Goals. Among the 8 goals are ensuring environmental sustainability, combating HIV/AIDS, malaria and other diseases, and promoting gender equality and empowering women. This suggests that there is general consensus among grant makers and leaders of the international community on the critical international development issues. 9. More than 8 out of 10 foundations surveyed indicated that compared with 2002, their 2003 international giving either remained unchanged or increased. The funding outlook for 2004 was also mostly stable to positive. You can access the International Grant-Making 3 highlight report from the Foundation Center at www.fdncenter.org/research. If you go to www.fdncenter.org/international, you will find a world of information to help you identify sources of funding for projects in your country. There are links to other organizations and publishers that have compiled directories of foundations and philanthropies for every region in the world. For example, the International Foundation Directory includes information on more than 2,300 organizations in approximately 100 countries. Arranged alphabetically by country, each entry notes the foundation's name, its native language, followed by an English translation, year founded, and founding person or organization, activities, publications, and finances, if available, assets and grant-making expenditures in the native country's currency, its board of trustees, officers, address with email, and telephone, telex, and fax numbers. Also, the World Guide to Foundations presents brief entries on foundations located all over the world. Volume 1 covers foundations in Europe. Volume 2 includes grant makers in Africa, America, Asia, and Oceania. Directories are organized alphabetically within countries. Entries contain, when available, the foundation name, address, telephone and fax numbers, email address, web address, year of establishment, chairman, manager, assets, annual income and expenses, restrictions, and areas of focus. At www.fdncenter.org/international, there is a link to Base de Datos sobre Fundaciones en Español, database for foundations in Spanish. The database contains profiles of over 120 foundations and grant makers operating in Latin American countries. There are links to country-specific resources. For example, the Directorio de Instituciones Filantrópicas, the Directory of Philanthropic Institutions, and specifically for Mexico, Centro Mexicano para la Filantropía, Mexican Center for Philanthropy. A searchable database containing entries for 7,000 philanthropic institutions. Now, once you research funding sources, you will become familiar with their guidelines for applying for funds. You will learn when, during the year, they make their decisions. Of course, you will need to follow their instructions exactly. But the truth is that though you will find all the information you need, whether your funding source is in your own country or elsewhere. You won't get your project funded unless you understand that getting even a worthy proposal funded has a political side to it. Remember what John Viscount Morley once said: success depends upon three things: who says it, what he says, and how he says it. And of these three things, what he says is the least important. In other words, the old truism, "It isn't what you know, but who you know," counts more perhaps than we would like it to. And fundraising is no exception. To be successful, you must establish your own powerful network to open doors to funding sources. Just sending a proposal in to anyone, even a strong, marketable proposal, won't automatically guarantee that you will receive the funds you deserve. It is a truism in fundraising that people give to people. If you remember nothing else from today's program, remember that people give to people. So, whether you are a for-profit or nonprofit, how do you find people to help you get funding? Create a circle of 10 people who can help you open the doors of funding sources. Take an inventory of all your existing contacts, either inside or outside your organization. Find out who you know who may have connections with funding sources or with others who might have connections. The people you are looking for may be government officials, people in the media, business colleagues, colleagues at other organizations. There is no set formula for those who could join your circle of 10, except, of course, that they should be willing to help you and should be able to assist you in reaching 10 other people like themselves who can open doors for you. Check for the names of members of the board of funding sources so you can ask any contacts you have if they know them or know people who know them. This may sound like an impossible task, but you'd be surprised how one person leads to another person who can lead you to another person. Using this method, you can soon build up an extensive contact list of potential powerful allies to help you secure funding. Whatever effort you have to put into it will be worthwhile, because without having a network, your attempt to secure funding will be that much harder, even impossible. Like everything in life, fundraising is a game. It has its written and unwritten rules. Winners know how to play by both. People will try to make you jump higher and higher through hoops to get funding. To be successful, you will have to be willing to go through the paces and still land squarely on your feet. Ignore the politics of fundraising at your peril. You will also need to position your organization and your proposal through a public relations strategy that will give you positive publicity. You need to find ways to be mentioned in newspapers and in other media so that you establish your credibility as a worthy recipient of funds. So you now know that there is a lot of money given for worthy projects. You also should have a sense of the kind of giving priorities that funders are likely to have. You know where to look up information about major sources of money and something about politics. In another module, before you know it, you're going to discover how easy it is to create a proposal that actually gets funded.